That's the bit. So this screen is a bit darker than usual.
Recommendations are that Council 1 reviews the ethics bylaw as per section 159 or section 160 of the Local Government Act. Two makes determinations in accordance with section 155 of the LGA. Proposed amendment evidence of bylaw is the most appropriate way to
Yep, that's good. That's good there.
And doesn't provide any indications as to reserve your rights when united. 3. Resolves that the bylaw should be amended. 4. Resolves to receive option 3 for consultation to seek feedback on the guidelines of amended bylaw as a whole. 5. Adopts a statement of proposal protection 1 and summary of information protection 2 public consultation using the special consultation procedure boards as A2 1.6 of the LGA. 6. Adopts a submission form protection 3 on lists options 1 to 5 for projects to cap management. And 7. Authorise the chief executive to issue presentation boards and statement of proposal summary information and to approve the final design and layout of documents prior to final printing and publication. We've had a lot of of discussion around this issue over the last X number of months because we did a lot of discussions to get a long-term plan around the cat management and some of the issues around it. And we've had a lot of discussion with the council around whether cat management in particular can be part of this program. And I think that the options that the staff have come up with or that and also the lead position of this that we're as a council. I really hope that we get not as many submissions as we just want to plan, but we get some really quality submissions that really take a really good look at whether the cat management should be by law or whether there's some other options. We've got plenty of jobs to do here with roosters, and yet we've had some difficulties about saying how many cats you can go to stay out of DC, so I think that's something that maybe the population can talk about. One thing I was thinking as I was reading last night was got to be really clear about what's the scope of it, and if we can't get into issues about whether cats are native birds or whether cats are not whether those are other people's responsibilities about the region council or CA. So this is specifically looking at issues around nuisance and public health and safety. And to that end, I was thinking about stuff. One of the organisations that are really critical about getting some feedback on this kind of work, because I know earlier on they were really interested because of the impact cats can have on their tenants if they're unwanted and many cats in terms of public health and particularly impacting fleas and ticks and things like that. So the only other thing I want to say is just on page 23, because I'm kidding, show my let's talk on the disadvantages of the first option. I think we should be not. The definition of the urban area does not really fantastic. Just show you that. And I mean, there's a lot of information here, and I really hope that most take the time to really read it.
First of all, I'll just add another property on the actual submission form on page 54. That is actually not public available as the recipient passing. I think
I'll just jump in here and see. It's already interesting.
Yeah, this needs to address. There are issues out there, and it is definitely one of those things that it's new, so it is unusual territory for people, but it's not new around the country. As you can see within the other scopes and bylaws that are set out around many other districts, there are similarities to what we are, and trying to get as much feedback as possible from the whole thing. So it's good to see the whole thing going out to be getting consulted on.
While I understand the whole purpose of the bylaw, I appreciate what the has done to get us to this point through Madam. My concern does come back as when we get a lot of feedback from our community. Sometimes the feedback can be quite emotive rather than actually dealing with issues, because I can see quite clearly within. When we're specifically talking about the cat, when we start talking about the issues in there, option 2, 3 and 4, we've already acknowledged will create extra cost to our ratepayers. However, option 5 actually looks as though it makes the neighbour of the person who owns the judge and jury. So maybe these sort of things need to be considered when they're the public making these submissions, because sometimes a nuisance to one person is not a nuisance to another, and when you've had rabbits and guinea pigs next door neighbours and they burrow holes in prime example, we have a cemetery in Carmel, which is regularly rabbits on it, and they regularly dig holes through to the neighbour's property, and unfortunately they don't like rabbits are owned by council. This is a prime example of when animals aren't looked after and they are a nuisance to the community, and the community is not able to do anything about it. So it's one of those things which is dealing with cats can be quite emotive, and so I do encourage when people do make submissions that they think about the consequences of those, what they're asking.
Thank you. I think we've actually come a long way in getting this statement proposal to where it is now, and I want to thank Peter because the information in the reports is very exacting and it's very comprehensive, so I think all the information is there. Just thinking back to the last time I reviewed Animal One, I remember I was a new council, sitting over on that side and I raised the issue of cats and just questioned whether we could discuss including cat management in our own law, and probably didn't answer that question. So I think to see what we can do today I was speaking to Judy earlier, and she summed up what she said. It's really a mixture of regulatory measures, education, and support. Those three aspects are important. You can't without the other. But the community does need the council to set some boundaries and show some leadership to this because they're struggling and can't do it alone. Speak to actually having had children through play centres and daycare centres, Kai Ora would be a good organisation to consult with, but I also request possibly that we email the consultation directly to early childhood centres in town, because as we all know, cats do come in and use sandpits as their own litter boxes, which is actually a real health and safety issue for the preschoolers, so I'd be interested to know what their feedback was also. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this going out to the public. It's really democratic, and I'm so pleased that we're going out with the whole bylaw. So thank you to the council for putting it out to the public so they can have their say.
Councillor Murphy, any further debate? So I definitely support the animals bylaw going out for review and therefore for feedback from our community. The issue of cats obviously is highlighted, but the whole bylaw takes into account the keeping of animals, all animals, excluding dogs. I think it's really important that we all recognise that the Dog Control Act has all of the things that we must comply with the registration and management of dogs. So it's important that our community understands the difference between them as well. So this is about every other animal, almost every other animal, perhaps not quite rabbits and feral rabbits, but the keeping of those animals. So this is going out to the community. I echo the same thanks, Peter, for the work that you put in to also giving information about what other councils are doing and the appropriateness of or not, as the case may be, using for cats. So, Councillor Cutforth, you're welcome.
Thank you, Worship. I think it will be. I take the point that Councillor Murphy made about the childcare centres. It's a really interesting point, and it's not one that I'm for. Do you think that it would be worth contacting whether it's the individual centres or whether it's like the umbrella organisations to get that sort of feedback. It was interesting to see the feedback, the information from other councils, and the fact that some councils do have bylaws and are using them for education purposes. And I know that staff found it very difficult to cost out what the cost may be if we did have bylaws. So I'll be keen to get some feedback and real detail about that. And I also echo what you're saying, Worship, that we need to be really clear that dogs are quite separate. So we are talking about other animals. I remember the last discussion around this bylaw was mainly on bees. So I'll be pleased if we move from bees to cats, so we're going sort of through the alphabet, sing out the divas as we go next to the elephants. Thank you, Worship. That's all I need to say.
Thank you, Councillor Cutfield. Right, applies been had. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. Councillors, I've just been notified that there is a problem with the sound on our live streaming, so can I apologise to people who are wanting to hook in and listen to this I'm sure that we're getting some technical expertise that should improve that. Brings us to item 6.2, the 2021-24 National Land Transport Programme funding options. Thank you, Peter. We have Dawn Spence from the Northland Transportation Alliance. Welcome, Dawn. Dawn is you will see, was the author of the item that's in this agenda. We have, and a correction, please, councillors. Before I ask for somebody to move it, a correction is required in item 2B. The figure should read 2 million. I'll do it by numbers. 2, 0, 20, 200. I can't even say what it is in numbers. 2,20,200. Yes, there we go. So can I have a mover for the recommendation with that number corrected, please? Councillor Conniff is moving. And Councillor Benny is seconding. Councillor Conniff.
Yeah.
Would you like to read out the motion? Thank you.
Sounds good. I'll put the amended number. Recommendations that the Council receives the Northland Transport Alliance report dated 30th September 2021, 2021-24 National Land Transport Program outcomes. Approves option 1 to redistribute the local share surplus funds to fully fund the following activities as proposed in the Council's 2021-31 long-term plan. A. 309,700 as unsubsidized work activities for footpath maintenance. 2,020,200, I believe it was, as unsubsidized work to fully fund the renewal activities for drainage, bridge reseal, and unsealed roads metaling programs, and 737,200 as unsubsidized work for pedestrian safety and pedestrian crossing improvement projects.
Thank you, Councillor Conniff. Over to you.
Yeah, it's great to see some of these funds that obviously have not been put into other areas being put into footpath maintenance, other reseals and whatnot, and pedestrian crossing improvements. The amount of people out there that we hear talking about the situations, ability to cross roads and actually get to their destinations without having to use a car, is a priority that we need to be able to focus on. But at the same time, ensuring that these traffic areas are safe for traffic coming through the areas too. Going through the list and looking at what's being done, it's great to see it's not all just one area. It is spread around the district. And there are a few things that are not included in it, but it's one of those things that we get to it when we can get to it, and I would believe the staff will prioritize these as much as they possibly can to actually get the beneficial outcomes for the majority of people as much as possible. So,
Thank you, Councillor Conniff. Any further discussion? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Richard. It's good to see this on the agenda, but more importantly, it's good to say that it's the local share of surplus funds, because that's what I've been asked for some time, to have a report back on this, where the surplus funds go. So it's really good to have it. You know, I support the local people for that. It's really good work.
Further debate? Can I also acknowledge Mark's sequence? I'm sorry. Yeah. 18. Councillor Murphy?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. With the drainage, does that include, so I'm imagining, does that include curb and channel, and then also, is that complicated? Could you just explain a little bit? So for B, fully fund the renewals activities for drainage. Just, what does that cover?
It covers all drainage, so it includes curb and channel, culverts and water tabling. In particular, water tabling is something that we've been trying to get up to standard for a long time, and in the end that we agreed, that was to try and have a continuous cycle of water table maintenance, and by investing this money back into it, we'll be able to achieve that.
That's great. And the reason I ask, this is specifically to do with my ward, and I know this is, our program is massive. We do so much work. There's just two specific points I want to raise, and one is something that my local constituents are constantly haranguing me about, and that is when the contractor comes out to do remettling, they often will leave quite a lot of metal in the drains and culverts, and I know this probably happens all over the place, but I would support extra funding going towards them spending 10 or 15 minutes, clearing the channels after they've laid them. And the other one, and this is specifically for Northland, I have been contacted recently that contractors been going around spraying footpaths to get rid of weeds. And I note, particularly in Northland, the amount of sediment which is building up in our curb and channel in the gutters. And I wondered to myself, if the contractors included in the contract did cover, a few people to just go around with shovels and actually just remove that sediment, we wouldn't have the problem that we do with weeds growing in the gutters. And I know that, that I'm getting right down into the nitty-gritty weeds. I know I am, but these are just, I would really ask Dawn and Mark, have a drive through Northland, and you'll see what I mean. Some of the sediment has built up almost to the top of the curb. So yes, I would love to see our contractors using the extra funds to do some clearing. Thank you.
Some increased level of service.
Yep.
I'll pull down a few weeds myself. Councillor Jones, good fun in the rain. Councillor Cutforth?
I was going to lift us out of the weeds to a more strategic level, I hope, because I think our expectation was that NZTA was going to really knock us back on funding, and in fact they've ended up coming through with, what is it? Sorry, Councillor, what's that? Well, we got less than we had hoped. We got more than we got last year. So I do think we need to acknowledge publicly that things could have been much worse, and in fact were a lot better than we had anticipated. So while we might have asked for 78% increase in funds for unsealed road metalling, we got 62% increase, which is not too bad really, and obviously there's enough metal to go into the drain. So I think it's good that we it wasn't as bad as we had anticipated, which is great.
Thank you, Councillor Cutforth. Councillor Corporal?
Yeah, through Madam Chair, maybe the staff can answer this one. We have a surplus in this fund, and that's generally because of savings made in present. Why are we still dealing with roads which are still in really bad condition even after the program? So I'm trying to understand, and I know we've got reports that come through, but realistically, when our ratepayers out there are not seeing a level of actual improvement with our road network, how do we create a surplus?
Kelvin's probably got the itching to get his feet. Kelvin.
Through the chair, the surplus is not from previous programs. The surplus is the difference between the original LTP application that council put forward and what was subsequently subsidised by NZTA. And the surplus is the difference in local share, so the 46% that hasn't been subsidised. So it's not a hangover from previous ones, it is the surplus remaining funds moving forward that haven't been subsidised by Whangarei. So what we're asking here is that council intended to spend that money on roading. We may not get subsidy for that component, but we still are asking Commission to continue to spend that so we can make those payments.
Thank you for that clarification. Again, I was just really trying to make sure we get very clear why we had the surplus there and what it's there for. Because as councillors, we are hearing a lot from our ratepayers about the roading and the roading network.
Thank you, Councillor Brewer. Any further debate? Councillor Cobb, the right of the clock. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Those against? Carried. And thanks to the team for all the work that you're doing on our ratepayers. Thank you. Sorry, hanging out here. Yes. Councillors, that brings us to item 6.3, page 96 of our agenda, the CCO exemption for Northland Events Centre 2021. Thank you, Councillor Beale. Declaring interest as council appointed trustees to the trust. Councillor Deeming. I'd like to move as moving the recommendation. Thank you. And Councillor Costello seconding. Councillor Deeming, would you like to read out your recommendation? Yep, it's not short.
That the council resolves to exempt the Northland Events Centre 2021 Trust as an organisation exempted under Section 7 of the Local Government Act 2002 until the 1st of January 2022.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Councillor Deeming.
Thank you. And I'm moving that because it's a very logical piece of business as usual. To not put a very new trust in a position of having to prepare a statement of intent that's of actually very little benefit to council or itself. Well, no benefit actually.
Thank you, Councillor Deeming. Any further debate? Councillors, this is absolutely pragmatic. You can't expect a new trust to do a statement of intent and then expect them to do another one in March of 2022. So it is the correct response. Thank you for the very clear report, Sandra and Jane, to give us that clear direction. Any further debate? I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6.4, the NCT trustee reappointment and update on establishment of the new trust, and Councillors Holtz and Gedding are also again declaring their interest in the item and will not take part in the debate. We have a recommendation on page 98. Councillor Peters is moving the recommendations and Councillor Ennis is seconding. Councillor Peters, would you like to read your motion?
We recommend that the council notes the disestablishment of the Northland Events Centre Trust on the 30th of November 2021. Number 2, approves the reappointment of Gavin Benning and Dominique Kua as trustees of the Northland Events Centre Trust for a term to end on the 30th of November 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. It's been moved and seconded. Over to you for the vote.
I think it's a really good move to appoint these two people who know about this project in the interim to carry it through. Having been to an event there recently, I admired the work done on the green, absolutely beautiful, and admire the beautiful lights and the wonderful screen. So I'm expecting all sorts of fun things to happen there this next year. Plus I expect that they will move into a financially plus position during this year. God willing, inshallah.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Any further debate? Councillor Innes?
Thank you.
This is an alert. This is a shakeout. This is a drill. This is not. This is what we could expect at any time, or should expect at any time, that we have been alerted that you can, in your mind, you can choose whether this is an earthquake alert, where you drop, cover and hold, or a tsunami alert, where you will deploy to our evacuation centre. And I challenge you to tell me what the evacuation centre is. I'm going to pretend it's an earthquake. So I'm going
So do we debate it? It was Greek, as soon as Greek got to be serious about shakeout and the preparedness that we all need to have for an emergency. The likelihood of an earthquake in Northland is remote, but the likelihood of a tsunami obviously is high. The things that I want you to think about, a grab bag. Have you got a grab bag? Have you got a kit at home for, are you prepared? Have you got a plan? Have you done all the things that, there's some really simple things. Do you know how to make a temporary toilet? I just learned about that this morning. Good fun. Because our wastewater systems could be impacted. So these are the kinds of things that we all, as a nation, really do need to put some serious thought into. And even though I despise these plastic bottles, that would have been the sort of thing that you would need to grab, and your phone, your automatic phone chargers, and any snacks that you may have, the lollies would, put in your pockets. It's a really important thing that we need to do as leaders of our community to encourage people to be thinking about these things. So thank you for the opportunity the good timing to stop Councillor Innes in his tracks to launch into his discussion about the NECT Trust reappointment. So I will hand back to you, Councillor Innes. Thank you, everybody, particularly Councillor Benny. That was quite a sacrifice to get down on the floor and back up.
All right.
Oh, sorry. Where is our evacuation point for a tsunami alert?
It's your tree.
Whangarei Primary School.
In front of the tree at the front?
I'm very glad that you're all wrong, because I was too. I thought it was the Whangarei Primary School. It's the Salvation Army at Albury Street.
Okay.
That's exactly why we're not doing it. We found in the real alert that it was not an appropriate place to go with school children, parents coming. So we have moved to the Salvation Army. They've agreed to that. Isn't that good to know, Councillor Holt?
It's only 40 metres at the moment.
They'll know when the end of the world is coming too, so that's good.
Sandra, as a controller, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Made about being prepared is really important, and the thing I would say as part of that, as a family, when you're at home, it's fine if everybody's at home and there's a tsunami or an alert. Have you got a plan so everybody knows how to contact everybody, where everybody will be when the phones are down, you can't contact people? Have you got a plan as a father, as a family, of what you're going to do, how you're going to meet, and how we're going to get together? That would be my take home.
Thanks, some really good advice. Back to the meeting.
Right. Well, thank you, Your Worship. It's not every day to bring an earthquake on, but I'd just like to acknowledge the work done, Sandra, in terms of the new trust for the event centre, and similar to Councillor Deming on the previous item, this sort of reinforces transition phase. It's good to have Dominic and Councillor Benny to join Councillor Holtz and the knowledge they have going forward. I'm quite excited about the new trustees as well. So we've got existing knowledge and some very good, I think, knowledge coming through nationally onto the trust. With COVID-19, challenging times, and yet there are times of opportunity as well. So, it's with pleasure that I move this recommendation.
You seconded that, but that's all right.
Oh, seconded, okay.
Interrupted you with that.
Yeah.
Again, councillors, this is just a pragmatic extension of the current trustees to another date, giving them a few extra days. And I thank them, both Dominic and Gavin, for agreeing to just that small extension until the new trust actually gets onto its feet. Councillor Peters, you're right at the block.
I know these two people will help Whangarei celebrate in lots of different ways over the next year. Good luck to us all.
Right, the replies been had. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. It's on the ninth. Councillors, we're up to item 6.5 on page 104, maintenance contracts. Recommendation for contract extensions, northern and southern areas. We've got a recommendation on page 104. Do I have a mover for the recommendations? Councillor Conlon is moving and Councillor Martin is seconding. Councillor Conlon, you get to read out a big long one again.
Recommendations that the council, 1, receives the 3-year performance Performance Review 2018-2021 report, and 2, endorses the recommendation that the engineer to contract to award the 2-year contract extension period separable portion 2 for Northern Area contract number 17085 to Fulton Hogan Limited, and Southern Area contract number 17086 to Downer Limited. Approves the contract value for PON 17085 Whangarei North Road Maintenance and Renewals contract to be increased to the sum of $24,785,372.40 for 2-year period, and total contract value to be increased to $73,672,579.76 exclusive of GST. 4, approves the contract value for PON 17086 Whangarei South Maintenance and Renewals contract to be increased by the sum of $26,546,196 flat, and the contract value increased to $74,431,750.97 exclusive of GST.
See why I get you to read that? It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Conlon, thank you.
Often with these things, I'll highlight this straight away, is it's not a new amount that is being funded, it is the upgrading of the fund that it is there. So that is on top of what is already there. So it's not a new amount that is going to the people. Because often I hear comments saying, oh my God, why is it so high? It's like, it's just adding on to the contract that we had previously. Roads are always going to be an issue. Roads will always be complained about, and with the types of geological formations and features and terrible areas that we've decided to put for historic reasons these roads in, we have to deal with the ongoing consequences, and unless we want to put a hell of a lot more funding into the budget to actually make these things even perfect, which will only last so long considering the area is almost at, Whangarei is almost at 100,000 people. And large vehicles and this, that, and the other, and all those other things are coming in and impacting it. We're going to have to deal with these things. So it's predominantly I've seen that these areas, they do get fixed up pretty quickly, though yes, some of these little maintenance repairs do reappear. And unfortunately, it's a Band-Aid until we can actually do the operation. And sometimes you have to get a new Band-Aid. But it is what it is. We need to make sure that these roads get dealt with so that the people can be happier.
Councillor Connor. Councillor Deeming.
The contract provides for the extension subject to the 3-year performance review, which has been carried out and found to be satisfactory. The budget has been found to be satisfactory. I'm not an expert on either the contract or the performance review. We hear what the people tell us about the condition of the roads, but our staff have been overseeing the work that's been done, and I am very happy to support the recommendation that has been made.
Thank you, Councillor Deeming. Councillor Cockerell.
Councillor Benny, Councillor Connor, Councillor Cooper, what the hell, look, basically... Look, Madam Chair, I have some questions here, and the technical questions that the staff can quite easily answer. These are more for clarification purposes. The performance reviews that are done, are they all based on the data that's produced by RAM?
Through the Chair, the majority of the performance measures are through the data RAM, but not all of them. Some of them are contract management data and just pure deliverable data that doesn't get housed in RAM. RAM is a data set for work-centric items, but not necessarily management items.
And just for clarification purposes, Madam Chair, RAM means?
Road Asset Maintenance Management.
Excellent, thank you. Sorry, not everyone knows that, so yeah, I've dealt with that industry, so I'm just saying. With the data which is produced by RAM, it talks about ruttings of roads and shovings of roads and elevator cracks and potholes and a number of these types of incidences. Can you explain to me, through you, Madam Chair, how the staff are coming up with a satisfactory outcome when in the last 3 years our roads have deteriorated significantly?
Through the Chair, I'll refer back to a previous report where we have highlighted that the performance levels within the contract are based on set KPIs, and we have identified that in some cases the KPIs don't necessarily equate to what we're seeing in the field, particularly in the Untitled road network. I would like to potentially take this conversation offline with Councillor Cockerell in regards to the degradation of the roads, because that's from a pure asset perspective, that's not what we're seeing in the results. So there are definitely issues that the roads themselves in some cases either not improving or not being resolved in the way that people expect, but that is somewhat confined to funding. Remembering that a component of this funding is lump sum, which means the contractors are responsible to continue to go out to fill a pothole and whatever under a fixed price. There's another component of the funding that is ordered works. We're presently looking at how we can provide council with data of the volume of ordered works that sit there and defects versus the actual budget that we have to fix that works. Because not everything that is identified is able to be repaired given budget constraints. But definitely if there's data that's out there that indicates that the roads are deteriorating significantly, then it's something we'd like to have a conversation about.
Through the Madam Chair, for clarification purposes, the the staff are going again, saying that the contractor is actually self-managing. Is that correct?
No, sorry, that's not correct. There's a component of the contract that has set parameters that is lump sum. We manage that through audit process, which is also measured. So we are required to audit a minimum of 10% of their audits. We are also, which we probably on average do about 50% coverage. We're also required to audit a minimum of a certain percentage of their physical works. We do monthly audits on their response times, so when a defect is identified, they have a certain number of working days to respond to that defect. That is tracked and ranked, and we then do reports on making sure that response time has been met or not met, and that's what one of the KPMs. Remembering, for example, in response time KPM, it may be worth 2 points. That response time covers unsealed roads, sealed roads, footpaths, drainage. So one of the things as an outcome of this review, if there's an improvement section, is for us to highlight some of the key areas where we need to put a greater focus on scoring in the KPMs to drive the more desired outcomes. And that's always been the intent of the contract, is to shift the weighting to the KPMs to grow things. 2 KPMs that we've just initiated,
I think through the chair, the key point to highlight, to clarify the question, is that the contract performance measures are about the measuring the performance of the contractor delivering the contract requirements. It is not a measurement of the road network condition and the performance of how we can't fund the level of deterioration. An example of that would be in the previous paper where the movement of motion was carried for a surplus unsubsidised share to be added towards the budget. That's a clear demonstration that central government haven't actually given us the full allocation to cover the deterioration of the network as mapped out in our asset management plans. They haven't funded the full level. We have this reserve left of rates, and we agreed that we will continue to contribute that towards the roading plan, but that's still deficient of what could have been the subsidised share. So the road condition and the funding of deterioration versus how the contractor is delivering the contract requirements within the funding Australian model is a point of difference in what we are requesting or advising you of. The contract is performing satisfactorily and there are room for improvement. And that's different to how the network deterioration is being funded. I hope that clarifies.
Through you, Madam Chair, probably the last question about this is the amount that's been increased the contract by. Again, it's pretty stock standard. But from what you're saying, would you say that the level of funds that are required now needs to be a lot more to actually achieve what the public are expecting?
So through the chair, I think the example that was raised in the previous paper, the request was for something like a 70% increase, 78% increase in unsealed road heavy network as a prime example. We've achieved an increase, but less than that. So our asset management plan was derived to not only maintain the existing levels of service, but in key areas like unsealed road, drainage, bridges, to actually lift that level of service to a level that we expect. And we've got some of that, but we haven't got all of what we asked for. So what that means is we might have had a program for unsealed road, for example, that was to do a concentrated 3-year improvement program. With the funding we've been given, that program might stretch to 4 to 5 years because we've got to actually spread the fund that we've got. So the plan that has been put forward is based on our asset activity management plan. That is based on data that we're getting from the field. The previous paper that's been presented to council shows that our data quality is improving significantly. That's allowing us to make decisions about assets based on real data. And part of the reason we've actually had the lift that we've had in subsidies is due to the fact that we've got an activity management plan that supports the improvements that we're requesting. And that's a real key in terms of what it is we need to do out on the network. We were concerned back in May that we would struggle to get funding to even maintain the roading to the level that it is. The reality is if we maintain to current levels, we degrade. There needs to be a level of renewals and improvements. And particularly in the unsealed network, that renewal and improvement isn't just putting some metal on the road, it's going through upgrading the drainage, upgrading the water table, getting the right crossfall, getting the right metal, and moving away from just putting a band-aid on to actually building a proper road. And that's the case in a lot of these areas with a key strategy for resilience, we've got a key thing slips, we've got a key strategy for improvements, and a lot of those areas have had a bump in the funding from what Kotahi due to the actual support documentation and argument within the activity management.
So one last question, it's just triggered something in me. Kelvin, you talk about the road assessment management or RAM program. Has that not been in place for 30 years? And how do you say that the data is only is showing better improvement now when the program's been in place for 30 years? Is it the contractors only now just filling in the forms?
So through the chair, one of the there were two key drivers of this new contract framework, and one of them was ensuring we were that the appropriate focus and measures were put on asset management, capture and correctness of data to inform asset management decisions. Now, that, I think at the end of year 2, showed about a 15% improvement in data quality. The issue with RAM is not the same for each council, and in some cases the data attributes have been used differently for each council. So over the last 3 years, the work that's been done between ourselves and the contractor has been about making sure we're getting consistency of data, we're getting accurate data, and we've actually now got tools in the background to measure and ensure that data is correct. There has been data in RAM previously, but as with any database, the data is only as good as what is entered and what is checked and what is used for. And it's, I think at the moment the WDC was sitting at a high 80s percentage of data accuracy, and we're continuing to work with what Kotahi at the moment. They're rolling out an asset management data standard for RAM, which has never existed really in the past. So each council's RCA's usage of RAM has been based on their own needs.
Through the chair, if I might help clarify for others that aren't familiar with RAM as a database for the asset inventory and the progression of using asset data for improved knowledge. Using the analogy of if you own a house and you would say, I have an inventory of my house, it's a spreadsheet, it needs to be painted and it gets painted on an interval, and as a householder you may have those in your mind already. So we've got a road inventory that's got all of that sitting out on the road, these number of culverts, and this road was sealed on that road on that day, called a paint, and so it's due to be repainted. That's quite stock standard, and that has been around for 30 years as a database, as the councillor points out. The level of intelligence that's been applied now is that the ability to look at this data and say that actually on the south-facing wall of my house, I have a different life cycle because of this environmental challenges to withstand, and some of the roads behave like that, land use change and the like. So the asset management team is becoming smarter at saying we have this inventory, we have this default new replacement date, but we're using our intelligence based on live information. That's where the improvements are coming in with our condition and remaining useful life factors. And that's the advancement in asset management with the inventory tool to take that remaining useful life and take a step change from a default to trying to massage and do the right thing at the right time in the right place.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you very much. I guess for a lot of rural people, the road is their biggest interface with the council and the services that they provide. And it's good to hear Kelvin say that basically the funding model that we've had, the roads have been getting worse. And that is borne out by the contacts and the phone calls that we get as elected members. However, through the time that I've been on council, I have seen a willingness from the team to really address the problem. And as we've just heard, a lot of it comes down to funding. You can't do what you can't afford to do. So it's great to hear that we have increased the funding. Thank you. And I guess there's one area where we could perhaps improve, and that is to our communications to let people know what the increased intelligence is that's just been put so well, and why we think things are going to improve and what we can expect to see. So I'm happy to support the motion. I guess it comes with a caveat that people will expect to see these improvements. But then thank you very much. There was and it should be noted because there is so much negativity about roads, but there was a meeting in Waipu where people, let's face it, do speak their minds at times. But the roading team came out and actually addressed all of the problems to the satisfaction of those people, and it was really good to see. And I think I sent an email to Rob at the time and the team saying how well the team had done, but it's a chance for people listening on the recording to hear that there is some progress, and I think there is light at the tunnel. And just someone to tell the people on the Mintai Road, if that's the case, then I've got a great as well. So thank you.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Reid.
I'm surprised to know we've got a car road.
We've got into a situation where we wade through all this paperwork and RAM and dam and everything else. I cover some days anything up to 600 kilometres around our county roads. And to me, preventative maintenance goes a hell of a long way in front of repairing after the damage has been done by the rain and inclement weather. So often you see a drain that needed cleaning. You follow the road inspection route from the contractor. They drive down the road, they look around, they go back. You go down that road a week later, a month later, the drain's still not being fixed. We've had a major downfall of rain. Half of the metal is sitting in the paddock on the other side of the road. Now I hope with all this new paperwork and the extension of these contracts, we might see them actually sending people out who will do their job properly. Because I'm going to watch from now on and I will be reporting that. Just putting the contractors on notice that I'm out there, I travel and I will be watching.
Councillor Murphy.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm just interested in the timing of this. I'm a bit concerned. So we last reviewed the NTA procurement strategy in 2017. Just looking at the document on Council's website. So it's 2017, the NTA transportation procurement strategy, 2017 to 2021.
Through the chair, a revision of the basically a revised update of that procurement strategy was signed off by Rob Kotahi earlier this year, so in July, so the latest procurement strategy is active and had no significant changes and rolled through that same strategy.
Okay, so the original strategy, that was that also through the chair? Was that also just signed off by Rob Kotahi, or was that a council document?
So through the chair, I believe the original strategy was endorsed by each council. And this strategy was endorsed by, because there was no significant change, endorsed by the CEs of each council and basically the strategy is an overarching of the individual council procurement plans, and there's a process requirement that's needed to uptake Whangarei subsidy, but we still need to abide by individual council procurement processes.
Okay, well that's it, because when I read, I mean that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about the fact that we've made some quite significant changes to our council procurement policy, and we're all going to be amending it probably over the next 6 to 12 months. Eddie Witherspoon did a presentation to us, yep. And so I'm just interested in how, obviously those things feed into each other, especially with also the climate adaptation goals and some of the priorities that have been identified. And I know that Waka Kotahi, I think Tony has, through the chair, briefing for Waka Kotahi now on climate adaptation. But I'm just, when you look at the report that was given to us, the addendum, one of the attachment, yes, very good. When you look at what's important to us on page 8, those are very, I endorse those bullet points, and also maintenance objectives, I endorse those bullet points. But what I don't see there is any information around sustainable procurement or acknowledgement of climate adaptation.
So through the chair, probably two parts to that answer. This being an existing procurement contract, this isn't a re-procurement, so the sustainable procurement. There is components within the contract requirement already regarding use of 30% local contractors and the likes, but this is based on the procurement of the contract back in 2018. And part of the contract was to go with 4 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1. Part of the reason for the plus 1 at the end is there's a recognition that procurement drivers do change. So there may be a time where what's important changes. So this 2-year rollover is to effectively continue with what we've got at the moment with revised funding, but in 18 months' time, if council's drivers change for outcomes, then there needs to be a decision at that time whether the current contract fits the model of what council is looking for as outcomes. Okay. And same with the procurement strategy, if there's a significant change in a single council strategy, then we would need to look at our NTA procurement strategy and how that implements into GAs and delivering any amendments required.
Very good. I'm very satisfied with that. Thank you, Calvin.
Calvin, it is a 3 plus 2 plus 1 plus 1.
4 plus 2. So we're in year 4 at the moment. Year 4 finishes on the 30th of June. And that's the end of sequel portion 1, 30th of June 2022. Yeah, and sequel portion 2 is so what we're attempting to do through this paper is provide significant notice both to council and the contractors of an intent to continue if that's the case, or if it wasn't the case, provide us with sufficient time to do a procurement process should that be the decision of council.
That's key, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Potts.
Yes, so I just want to extend out a bit what Councillor Coccarello was saying, and it's a bit like the roading network, it's a bit like a big chain, and what we get our attention dragged to is the weakest link. And the weakest link is bad workmanship that's not corrected. And the recent one, the first day, where we just sealed that road early in the year, and then we went back and did some rehabilitation and some sewage work at the end, and it just got a patch on it. It looks absolutely hideous. And of course, the ratepayers let us know, they expect us to follow it up. I look through here and say where do you correct instances like that? That should have to have a total redone. It should have to be flipped up and redone by the contractor. And we haven't got enough of that work underway, and we don't hold people accountable. And it's quite interesting being an urban council now as opposed to being a rural council, because where I live up in the region, we get the truck coming around and cleaning the gutter out every month, just about. And but the only problem is he fixes all the garbage because the suction units behind the brush and blocks all the culverts. They never clean the culverts. So like last week when it rained like anything, the water's diverted out to the road, not into the drain. And so there's a lot of the simple stuff that is not covered. And yet we can know some complaints, yet we can't get it into the network document. But if you read this, it's like everything's perfect, everything's going well. And it's like a self-gratification document, as opposed to actually are our roads being kept up to a good standard. So we're hearing complaints. How do we fix the complaints? There's nothing in here. It's a bit like Councillor Reed said. You know, a lot of pre-work should be done before it's done. The culvert should be cleaned. All that should be done, but it's not. And it's costing us big money to fix up after the event. And it's quite interesting. If anyone don't believe me, just drive up first down and have a look at it. It's just appalling to have that type of work in the town. It's just not acceptable. Well, it's not acceptable to me. It might be acceptable to somebody, but it's not acceptable to me. I've been around here a long time, and the work is deteriorating. And as opposed to outside the shops and Marnie Road itself, Marnie Road, we know it's got to be rehabilitated at some stage. But the sewer work they did up there, they actually patched up really, really good. They did a really good job of that. If you just around the corner, it's just real substandard. Thank you.
Through the chair, just to clarify, those are two separate pieces of work. So while we have a ability, so the initial road sealing was done through the maintenance contracts. However, the sealing post stormwater is not. It is not part of these maintenance contracts. It's part of the stormwater or the water upgrade works. We do have the ability through the corridor access process to go back and enforce appropriate reinstatement where it's possible. But those two pieces of work, the first step and the Māori separate, aren't part of this road maintenance contract. The road maintenance contract is about renewals and rehabs, not related to projects outside of road. So yes, I agree there are areas where workmanship needs to be addressed, and we do that through formal notice to contractors. We do that through there's KPMs in here about work quality, there's defect liability periods where contractors are held responsible for those things, and part of the change in structure was about making sure that we get more people out on the road from a council perspective actually looking at what's being done, and that's with the area supervisors, with the maintenance. So there is more resourcing looking at it, but it's not always the roading maintenance contractor that causes the defect that's talking about. Unfortunately, what happens is the roading maintenance contractor then has to try and go back and rectify it.
What we really want to hear, Colin, is that where a water main is going to be replaced or a stormwater asset is going to be upgraded, that there's a communication between, so that we don't seal the road and do it beautifully and then dig it up later. That's what causes frustration as well.
Through the chair, that has definitely been worked on. It is part of the reason that the Māori rehab has been held off as it has, because we were talking with water and knew that this was coming. So the Greg's team is working with the waters team to make sure when we're looking at our forward work programs that they're coordinated wherever possible.
Thank you.
Just one more question.
So maybe a question?
Yep, my question. How do our contractors demonstrate that they are trying to minimise the use of chemical sprays on roadsides and footpaths?
Through the chair, the maintenance contract requires has a specific standard for them to actually use the spray. Spraying is, I guess, the most economical option as it currently is at the moment. We're doing some work in the far north with the Thinking and Spraying Committee at the moment, looking at alternate options. Initial indications that did some counts last year. It's anywhere from 4 to 6 times the cost of current spraying to maintain the existing level of service for those alternate options. So it's definitely something that us as an organisation are working with communities to try and sort out, but it does come down in the end to what level of service do we want and what budget do we have available to do that. And ultimately, if councils decide that spraying is not what their approach, then there would need to be funding to match the ultimate.
Thank you, Calvin. Councillors, we awarded a 4-year contract back in 2018, and as part of that we said after 3 years we'd review it. This document did exactly that. It's done the review. It was interesting looking at the performance over a 3-year time frame, and in most cases there has been improvement. I'm just pleased to see that. So that gives us the information as to whether or not we give the 2 years subscription. They've met the criteria. This is just a step to say yes, we will give the additional 2 years for both of those contracts. It's not the additional 1+1. There's another step in the process for that as well. So I'm comfortable today, and I was grateful to see the report and the information that was included within it, including the maps of where the monthly inspections are, and et cetera, et cetera. But I do hear that we have greater expectations on behalf of our ratepayers, that we would want more, understanding of course that costs more. So if the contractors are doing what they've been asked to do and signed up for their contract, if we want more, we have to actually resource it further. So I'm comfortable with the recommendations today, and I'll be supporting. Councillor Connell.
Thank you. Yeah, and obviously this was going to have a lot of discussion with this topic. I'll say thank you as well to Councillor Deeming for adding those other points in that I hadn't originally about the timing of the contract and whatnot. And yeah, like we've recently had the long-term plan just go through, and the biggest portion of the funding went to transportation, which this is part of. If people wanted to put more rates towards this area to get a higher level of service, then it's up to them to say that. Until they put the money out there to actually get those levels of service, we unfortunately are more reactive as opposed to proactive. But at the same time, hearing that they are trying to be as proactive as possible as well, and it's a difficult situation because sometimes all we have to complain about is the roads. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. No motion replies been had. I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6.6, speed limit bylaw, Waipu South and Beaches. Councillor Cooper is moving the motions. You get to read that. And Councillor Connor is seconding. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Recommendations that the Council adopts the regional speed limit for Waipu South, Lanes Beach, Urban and District Beaches. Recommendation report attachment 1.2. Recommendation number 2. The Council receives a report, regional speed reviews, Waipu South, Lanes Beach, catchment technical report attachment 2. 3. Delegates the Chief Executive to make any necessary minor drafting or presentation adjustments to the attached recommendations report attachment 1, and to approve the final design and layout of the documents prior to final printing and publication.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. It has been moved and seconded. Over to you for the debate.
Thank you very much. I move this recommendation with mixed feelings. There is a safety aspect and there is some real need in areas, but so there's positives, and I thank you guys for your work, and it's a massive amount of work when we look at it, so thank you. But there's also this, what I call the slowing down of life to the lowest common denominator, which hurts me a little bit. However, in balance, I believe that the safety aspect outweighs the nuisance of having to slow down in life, and so therefore I move it.
Councillor Deeming.
Thank you. I'd like to second those comments and say that Sean and his team have done a magnificent job of consulting amongst the local people. I have no doubt that the minute that the new speed limits go up, we will start to get phone calls from people who are upset about them being lowered or whatever, and say nobody asked us. But in fact, the team have gone to great lengths to try to get to as many people as possible to get comment back from them. They've heard the comment, they've listened to it, and they've acted on it. And I support what they've done. Thank you.
Councillor Dean. Any further debate? Councillor Connor?
Yeah, we've got a lot of those ones today at the moment. Everybody's like, we want to touch this thing, but it's another one of those heated topics that will be always discussed and opinionated, and safety is the biggest concern here. A couple of questions I had from it as well, but it's obviously predominantly this is to deal with humans as well, and it's not necessarily to deal with the wildlife and whatnot too. And also within the document it states the areas of beaches to be able to be cleared. But at the same time as we're putting these in place, there are animals that are nesting in these certain areas. There are seals that lay upon these beaches as well, that we are need to be concerned about as well. I am glad to see down the recommendation that the onus is being put on the drivers to be aware of pedestrians, but also that the people who are using the beaches to be aware that there are vehicles on these beaches as well. So that and is something else that I personally take into consideration, the impact on other life forms rather than just humans. One of the questions I found quite interesting as well, especially in the analysis of the beach on page 31 or page 146, depending on which part of the document you're looking at, about what the Land Transport Act defines a road as including, because I look at point D, a place where public have access, whether it's right or not, and I kind of wonder, like, what do we say about parks and gardens and stuff like that? Because people have access to those, but we don't necessarily put speed limits on those, but we should be driving around them either. It's just an interesting thing. But yeah, what do we have? Speech question. What do we have in the way of impact on wildlife in regards to these speed bundles? If anybody could clarify.
Through the chair, there's a couple of issues in relation to that. In terms of wildlife, probably the biggest impact was vehicles on beaches, and council does have a control of vehicles on beaches bylaw, which looks at access to the beaches by vehicles. And we did a partial review of that last year, I think it was, or the year before, which has generated this speed limit review on district beaches. So all the speed limits bylaw does is actually set what speed limit is on the beach where vehicles have access. So probably, I know that the control of vehicles on beaches bylaw is probably due for review, but I'm guessing here in the next couple of years, because that has to be reviewed periodically. And that's one issue that council can certainly address as to where vehicles have access to beaches, particularly in relation to residents, which is probably the major issue.
Last question as well is, with the implementation of these things as well, is there going to be any I lost the word, but watching these areas actually, rather than expecting the public to feedback, rather than expecting, well, we're putting these things in place. We're getting anybody to monitor. Yes, that's the word I'm trying to find. Is there going to be any enforcement and monitoring of these issues? Because quite often you'll see somebody going down real fast on a dirt bike or whatnot down the beach, and it's like, I'm sure that's a lot faster than 30 k's.
Through the chair, there's two different parts on the road itself, the road network. Enforcement monitoring is primarily a function of the police. However, the data and information we have, we will be monitoring that over the coming 2 or 3 years to see what the success of those changes is. In terms of the beaches, monitoring enforcement is a little more security, because the police don't necessarily have powers, but the council has powers in relation to enforcement and things like that. But once again, we will be looking at monitoring the success of those speed limits over a period of time. And the last thing I'd like to mention is that when it comes to beaches, currently all the beaches in Whangarei District have a 30-kilometre hour speed limit on them. And so there has been this conception that there's no speed limits on some of our beaches, which is incorrect. So hopefully over a period of time we'll be able to monitor that, and during the review of the control teams on beaches would be an ideal time to look at that data.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Whangarei.
Through Madam Chair, I probably should acknowledge the fact that I am a board member of the Northland Automotive Association, and they did make a submission into this document and the proposal that put forward. I think it, and I will highlight one of the aspects that the AA have brought up, and that is the fact that speed is not always the major issue, even though that is the first thing that most governments and councils do to fix problems. The problems generally equate to condition of road, condition of driver, condition of vehicle. There are so many variables involved, and unfortunately, some of those we have no control over, and the AA makes it quite clear within their submission, within crash rates, within death within high speed. But I think we are going to end up with issues where we lower the speed constantly just to try and reduce accidents, yet that will not actually solve the problem and will not actually reduce the number of accidents. It will reduce the severity, but not the number of accidents. And that is something which is actually around about driver education and about improving of our roading network so that they are actually able to be driven at the correct speeds that they need to be driven. And the AA also highlighted on the aspect that when it comes to roading networks and putting speed limits on, that the speed limits need to be appropriate for the environment that they're in. So we need to be acknowledging of that. And I do note that you've replied back to them and the other organisations. And but I do say quite clearly that as a member of the AA, I'm quite conscious of our roading and the drivers that drive, and sometimes they actually need to be controlled rather than the road.
Councillor Cutforth.
Your Worship, I just had a question for you. We heard submissions, submissions were sought almost a year ago now, and the hearings were in February, and I just wondered why it's taken quite this length of time to get to this point.
Through the Chair, once we've heard the submissions, we go back and do a fair bit of work in terms of looking at the roads and the areas that are at risk or in dispute. And so that does take a bit of time. However, the vast majority of it is the fact that at the moment we also have speed reviews going on in the district. And with this one in particular, we had to coordinate it with the speed review of the District Council as well, which deals with the other end of Cove Road, so that the recommendations and the implementation of this would go through for implementation are coordinated between the two councils, so you don't have an inconsistency halfway along Cove Road. So those are some of the reasons, but there is a lot of work going on.
Okay, thank you, Lucia. I'm just conscious that other areas are waiting upon these speed reviews too, so the quicker we can have speed reviews, the better. Thank you.
Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Worship. I'm mindful of what Councillor Cutforth is saying in terms of future reviews. Just looking at the whole speed limit aspect, part of the speed review, as I understand it, through you and Jim, relates to the whole of the road reserve, and particularly when you start looking at slow streets, there needs to be design in terms of those streets. It's not just a question of speed limit. I'd be interested in your comment on that.
Through the chair, you are correct in that what we need to try and do is set speed limits where they're within about 10% of the speed environment. So that means that, for example, if you take outside schools, for example, where we set a variable speed limit, we need to achieve a road environment that will actually have people intuitively so you get a high level of compliance. So there is an aspect of having to look at physical works, and an example of this speed review is what we're looking at in Whangarei Cove, where there are physical works that are proposed as part of that lower speed limit to support the speed limit that we want to put in there. There are other issues that we can do generally as part of the existing budget, which is signage, gateway treatments where you have those large signs where people see a clear entry into the community. So there's a whole variety of different things we can do there. One of the difficulties, and we were discussing this earlier on today, is in terms of having a budget to be able to achieve those things. So we can set a speed limit, and then over time we can look at physical works, additional works that need to be done. So certainly a consideration.
Through Madam Chair, then the concern I would have is a delay in those works taking place where you have a speed limit that changes, say to 40 k's, and you don't have the physical infrastructure works to be able to reinforce that.
Through the chair, to date, most of our speed limit reviews, particularly the 40 km/h areas, have been dealing with smaller rural coastal communities, which have a different vibe to them. That is one issue that we will need to address when we get to larger things like from Whangarei City, where we may have to look at a speed limit for areas where we do have slow streets existing, and another approach to other areas. That's something that we will have to address.
Thank you.
Councillor Murphy. Thank you. Through the chair, yes, I support the recommendations and I support slowing things down in general. My question was just about, it's been a bit confusing incorporating the vehicles on beaches and the beach speed limits as part of this. One of the submitters was Mr. Lester Sherman from Whangarei. So I've just got a couple of questions about the report. So on page 122 of the agenda, you address all the questions and issues that Mr. Sherman raised. And then on page, the other pages, 146, you address Whangarei Beach specifically. But there isn't, and so Mr. Sherman's submission was that the speed limit be reduced to 20 kilometres on Whangarei, which I definitely support. But you have, at the end of the report, you do recommend Lang's Beach should be reduced to 20 kilometres. But I didn't get the reference to, your decision about Whangarei remaining at 30.
Okay, through the chair, Lang's Beach, deal with that one first. It is probably a bit of a unique beach in terms of speed limits and vehicles on beaches in the Whangarei District. There's a lot of community issues around that. We had submitters fairly well divided between a 10 kilometre an hour, 20 kilometre an hour, 40 kilometre an hour.
Yeah, no, through the chair, sure, I remember and I appreciate the situation there and I agree, that's fine, that's good. But I'm just trying to get clarification because Whangarei, I don't know how often you come out there, but that is a massively busy beach, massively popular too. So I'm just checking so the last full review, like you said, the bylaw was created in 2009. The last full review was done in 2016. I was told that the next full review wouldn't be until 2026. So there's issues around Whangarei Beach, but also we had the petition from the Northland Sandspit Protection Society asking for vehicles to be banned on the Sandspit. So I'm just checking, when we do the speed limit review in Tutukaka catchment, will there be another opportunity to look at Whangarei Bay and other local beaches?
Through the chair, we can certainly look at that. I agree with the fact that lumping speed limit review on the beaches as well as the main road network could be confusing, and we could try our best to separate those two items out. So as we do speed reviews in the Tutukaka coast area, I am absolutely certain that we will get submissions relating to the beaches there. And we will have to address that as we go.
Yeah. Okay. So the Whangarei Bay, you just felt that, through the chair, you just felt that... No, I'm just trying, because Lester will see, the rate, he's the treasurer for the Tutukaka Coast Ratepayers, so they will question me on, what was your justification for not lowering the speed limit at Whangarei Bay?
Through the chair, I think that when it comes to the speed limits on beaches, it is more of almost a political decision as opposed to a technical decision which is at the local. And the existing speed limit on the 50 kilometre an hour on that beach seemed appropriate when we were doing the review. However, it is more of a political decision. When it comes to road speed limits on roads, we've got far more technical issues that have to be addressed and considered as well. That answers your question.
Okay.
The vehicles on beaches bylaw as opposed to the speed limit. It's interesting overlap of the two decisions. Just bearing in mind that this is about the Waipu South and beaches.
Well, no, it's also about district beaches. It's about speed limits on district beaches, so Lester Schumann made a submission on Whangarei Bay because that came under the statement of proposal.
Yeah, but just note that we're adopting the recommendations report. We're not making a decision on beaches as opposed to the ones that are in Waipu South Banks Cove catchment. So there are two aspects. We've got a recommendations report, a technical report.
Oh, sorry, so just to clarify then, so point 1 adopts the regional speed limit review, Waipu South, Main Beach and district beaches. So that's saying that, in other words, all the other beaches will remain at 30 kilometres an hour, that's the recommendation, except for Lanes Beach, which will be lowered to 20.
It is an important point.
I just provide a brief point of clarification. The reason for adopting the technical report is to ensure that there is a public record of council having considered all the technical matters that they required to be considered under the local government. Under the 7 speed limits rule, that's why that report is there. The recommendations report provides the recommended new speed limits within the review area, which includes the district beaches. And the reason for adopting that now is so that we can go through the procurement process to make those changes to the
But Councillor Murphy's point is that including the beaches, so we will have a bylaw which includes all beaches, and one beach has been reduced through this and another hasn't.
basically.
It's the recommendation, wasn't it?
Do you have to bring back my reply?
Councillor Cooper, I nearly am. I just want to clarify in my own mind that we're not doing anything that we will regret. So I may just take a 5-minute adjournment, please. So Councillor's back at 10:40. the regional speed limit bylaw for Waipu South, Langs Beach Urban. So it's important that we're not talking taking Langs Beach itself as a separate, it's all the people who live in the roads in the Langs Beach area, and district beaches. Now, across our district, for our vehicles on beaches bylaw, there are some places where we have said there will be no beaches for safety reasons, and we've been through that process, so that's not what this is about. This is about the speed limit where beaches are used by vehicles. And we have two places in the district where the vehicles and pedestrians are in potential conflict. One of those is Langs Beach, where people are taking boats and what have you, and they also drive along the beach. Of course, where there are pedestrians and vehicles, there is potential for conflict, and all of our beaches are roads and can be used as that. The other one was Whangarei Bay, but where there is an access road for people who live there. For all beaches, we're proposing is that there's a 30-kilometre speed limit. For Langs Beach, we received submissions and we're reducing that to 20 kilometres. And Sean, you might want to just outline the last point that you made, that if in future we wanted to review that, there's a mechanism for that. Can you explain that?
Yes, through the chair. There is a mechanism for doing that when we do the review of Tukaka Coast, for example. We can re-include some of those specific beaches. And my feeling at this point would be to include very specific beaches where there are obviously ongoing issues, and there would not be very many of those beaches.
Thank you. That's good. That's clear. Thank you, Sean. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Cutfield?
Can I just check and just to clarify? So does that mean that Whangarei Beach at the moment, if we pass this, would remain at 30k? Correct. Until there is a review of Tukaka and it could be included. Okay.
Any further discussion? Councillor Cooper, you right to reply?
No, fine, thank you.
I'll put the motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you for your support for that early one. Brings us to item 7.1, page 10 of our agenda, the financial report for the 3 months ending the 30th of September 2021. I bet there's going to be something keen to move this. That's okay. And the seconder, Councillor Deeming. Councillor Cockrell, would you like to move your motion?
I will move the motion and read the motion at the same time there for you. The recommendation is that Council notes the operating results for the 3 months ending the 30th of September 2021. Through you, Madam Chair, that the staff of action will, I'm sure Ellen will actually highlight specific things through the report, but the report quite clearly shows that there is an unfavourable variance of 1.1 up to this point, but there is a favourable variance of around about 1.5 by the end of the financial year. So it is one of those things, and as we are only 3 months into the game, it does show that that things are changing. It is a movable environment. I am wondering whether COVID is playing a major part to costs, both for income and expenditure. But I'm sure Mr. Adcock will quite easily be able to explain a lot of that stuff. We've also noted in the media that the Reserve Bank is increasing inflations, and also a lot of the banks are also doing the same thing. So these are things, it's movable times, and again, this is just the first 3 months of the financial year, and I'd love to hear from Alan.
Thank you, Worship. As Councillor Cockrell pointed out, we currently have an unfavourable variance of 1.1 million, and that's driven primarily by subsidies which we've received from NZTA. New work not being done yet, so that's actually $3.5 million of revenue up there. So we've compensated for nearly $2 million of that through other things we've got going on. I would just only caution regarding the forecasts. It's early in the year, B, there's lots of unknowns due to COVID, but more importantly, there's a lot of strain across the organisation right now. We've got a lot of vacancies, and we don't believe that the knowledge which was given to forecasting was accurate interview figures at this point. I think people have to be able to do the minds to it, or have enough information to make it reliable. So I look at those numbers with caution. I don't think it's a problem necessarily, but you can't necessarily rely on that. We're not actually going to do forecasting this month for the same reason. What we're going to do is wait until we know where we are with the Ruku and do a more in-depth forecast for after that, and then from the base rating plan for next year. We've got some more reliable figures there. So there are no significant issues apart from those brought to us by COVID. I was actually on a webinar with Connors and Bill yesterday talking about the macro environment. There are some major issues with supply chain across the world, and we are at the end of that supply chain for many things that we rely on. Disruptions not just to the scheduling of freight to New Zealand, but there's the exponential rise in freight costs. That means some people simply aren't landing goods in New Zealand anymore because it's not worth it. They can't pass those costs on to consumers, so they won't get in the door. That's been the shortages right across the board. Because also the borders are closed, there are major shortages around technical expertise, and then many areas which council is competing with resources for. Not just in physical works, but in whether it's strategy work or consulting on technical matters. People aren't there, and there's massive demand across the board. So if you can afford to get the work done, there's no guarantee for one resource to do it. And what they're saying is that councils need a good hard look at the program and what's actually achievable to do. And it's not just in terms of capex, it's operating projects as well. Using caution there. There are forecast increase in inflation as well. There's got a lot of different parts around that, but certainly the forecast a year ago I seem to be inadequate. We are going to expect to see our high inflation drivers for the next 1 to 2 years. We'll come back to normality, whatever that new normal actually is. And finally, the point Councillor Cockrow made, interest rates are on the way up. We have predicted that for some time, and we have planned for that. We have a comprehensive hedging program for our debt, and we have protection for many years ahead. We are also poised to act on a blended extend strategy for our swaps. We will take the current swap book and actually extend some of those out even further. There's also movement in long-term rates, which we can do a little bit better than we did currently. So we're waiting to do that. So we're ready to go on all of that as well. So we've planned ahead for this. I think we're in a sound position. There's going to be pressure on us to deliver our full program. There will be cost increases as well. It'll be offset by other things though. For example, we have vacancies. There's currently positive variance in our personnel line. Which is good financially, but bad from a work management perspective and history that's putting on staff. But look at the finances in particular, or specifically, I think we're at the end of the year in a really good position.
Thank you, Ellen. It's not related to this current financial year, but for next financial year with LGCI, any sort of crystal ball gazing as to what that could be?
Again, that was the webinar I was on yesterday. They weren't definitive, but they are indicating we could expect to land on a 3% minimum for the LGCI, which is more than 2.5 million that have.
Yeah, and it's going to be a difficult concept to get across. And we've said 2% plus LGCI, but we've always sort of said that's 2.5%. So whatever it goes up, our community will just go, oh, you're just putting the rates up, which we are, because that's what the inflationary rate is under the government cost of living. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, Richard. Through you, Ellen, page 211, personnel costs, lower than budget, 600,000. Does that also include consultants or contractors, are they within that personnel area, or is it just for permanent staff?
Through the chair, that's just for permanent.
Just permanent staff, thank you.
Separate budget lines for contractors. And we separate out those who are plugging a vacancy as opposed to those where contracting special services or wouldn't have the expertise of our staff would.
So if I could clarify that further, so looking at planning and development, then we have contractors undertaking, for example, resource consent applications that be regarded as personnel? No, they're not. Okay, no, that's good.
Councillor Cutforth.
If the government is if the prediction is about a 5% inflation rate based on CPI, why would places like Burl be considering that the LGCI would only be about 3%? So I would have thought it would more closely reflect CPI.
Through the chair, that's a very good question. One was asked as well. But it looks as if the basket of goods affecting council.
Sorry?
It looks at a particular basket of goods affecting council as opposed to a consumer. But that Reserve Bank forecast, what I believe is going to come back again, is currently there, but the rolling 12 average could be lower. So they're looking at the long-term trend of that. So for the LGCI, there could be a longer tail in that inflation pressure. So where the CPI could peak and come back down again, the LGCI could stay at a high level. So it plays out different over time.
Again, open to confusion for people like CPI and LGCI, etc. Any further debate? Put the motion. You wrote the plan,
I think Ellen has made a fairly good demonstration of what the knowledge base is and what's going to be happening or possible happening for the future. So I think we'll like this.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Against? Carried. Item 7.2, the capital projects report for the 3 months ending 30 September 2021. I'll move. Councillor Murphy.
Because I really like reading aloud, so I'd really like to read it. Recommendation that the council notes the capital projects report for the period ending 30th of September 2021.
I have a seconder for that very nicely spoken motion.
I think.
Councillor Hobbs. Councillor Murphy.
Well, the report is self-explanatory because it gives us a list of all the projects that are currently tracking through the year. So yeah, it's fantastic to see the breadth and the number of projects that council have on the go. It's really quite incredible. I don't really have anything specific to point out. Just that, one particular thing which I thought which came up yesterday, I don't think it would be confidential, but we were discussing the Civic Centre and just with COVID and how that's impacted on infrastructure projects and construction projects. And I was really impressed with the very few number of days that our project was held up for. I think, is it okay to say the number of days? Is that confidential?
Oh, Alan may want to update on the...
Through the chair, the last period where we were level 3, and then came back to level 2, but because we already lost 5 working days at that time.
Yeah, so I thought that was impressive and quite a relief actually to know that we didn't have significant delays. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy. Any further discussion? Councillor Paul.
Through Madam Chair, question for Ellen, and it might fall under Simon's jurisdiction, but with the announcement yesterday, what is the likely effect on our budget going forward with our capital projects, going the fact that stormwater we've got in there 2.5 million, wastewater we've got 6.6 million, and flood protection, which might fall under the 3 water program as well. and then you've also got water itself, which is 14.2 million. How will that affect those projects?
This year?
Not this year, but going forward.
I mean, this is the report for this year, and there's no impact for this year. The entity, should they be formed? Should they be as 2024? And whether or not we're part of it, all the time will come. But for the impact on this financial year, our capital works programs, nothing at this stage. But yeah, it's a good point about futures, because we've planned through our long-term plan for expenditure in those asset classes. Alan, you want to...
Thank you. Just your attention, please, to the graph on page 232. This does tell a pretty clear story. Last year was a record year of capital expenditure by a long way. We are tracking exactly to that. Look how far behind the graph we are. We put a massive increase in the LTP, and particularly with COVID as well, I don't believe the ZBD is sustainable, and we need to anticipate now a significant amount of carry forwards into the next year, which means our debt will be lower than forecast, and we'll use interest savings on that. But as we head next year's plan, we will think very hard about how we deal with these projects. We simply can't do this year for all sorts of reasons. Not just the volume, but also COVID impacts impact on us. Something to keep in mind as we work our way through the year.
Thank you, Alan. We're going to check. Councillor Holmes.
Yes, so just Mr. Edgeworth, I've already highlighted what I was going to talk about. Being all the way through our long-term plan, all the plans we're guided by experts, and we take their word direct and deliver all these projects. That's why we've got a graph there. And just now, in the 3 months into the start of the year, to say we're not going to meet the end result, or it's sort of like throwing in the white flag already. We surrender. We put all those projects in the long-term plan. We went out and we sought the rates to fund them. We got the rates in to fund them, and that's fine. But so I'll be watching that graph and with interest. The other one is on page 228 this is where we get a bit of mismatch, because you see halfway down the page is the government funded the MBIE, we've already spent 1.9 million, but it doesn't show in the budget. So where does it show? If it's not in our budget, in our revised budget, where is it? But we've already spent it. So how does that happen? Because that impacts on that graph behind on the next page. We've spent $2 million, it's not in our budget, but that's probably why we're not meeting those targets on page 232.
Pretty sure I'll come back to you on that. It could be a hangover from last year with the shovel-ready money the government came, which wasn't budgeted at all. It could be a completion of that work. I'll come and clarify that.
Just to clarify, councillors, I want to be crystal clear. Throughout the LTP process this year, staff raised concerns about the deliverability of the capital program. We've said that from day one. We did not say you could deliver this. We've always raised it as a concern. You told us to get on and do it, and we will do our absolute best to do it. But we did not recommend that you increase the capital budget by $50 million on the record.
I'd actually like to speak on that same point, because that's exactly what I was going through my head. What we didn't do was take the advice of our experts, who were telling us exactly what Rob has just told us, and this is where it comes home to roost, and then the auditors complain bitterly because we've got carry forwards. Well, if we're going to put great big projects in our LTP that we can't actually achieve, that's where we will end up.
Just a question on that, because I can't remember how much, but I know a bulk of the extra money that we put in was for new road sealing. How many millions was it?
Through the chair, there was 48 million over 10 years. So 2 million this year. But just with respect to the transport funding and 4 million year to date versus 12, a large portion of that relates to the uncertainty around funding for the first 3 months of the year. Now that this morning's paper was finalised with the funding outcomes and redistribution of subsidised, the intent is for the asset management team to bring a revised paper to council of a 3-year program, being the 3 years of the LTP and the timing associated with it, recognising that a number of transport projects that were initially intended to be done through the summer construction season, we've already missed the opportunity to do so with that budget uncertainty, so they'll have to be pushed out. So, but the intent is to provide a program this side of Christmas that shows the 3-year delivery rephased over the 2.5 construction seasons.
Thanks for that clarification, Paul.
That answers my question, thank you.
Any further, Councillor Cockerill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Alan, you made a comment previously, and the council have highlighted the fact that all our subcontractors during the COVID time should all get paid fairly quickly. Is that still in the process at the moment? Are we still keeping that standard up?
Through the chair, yes, we reinstated that through this lockdown, so we do double pay runs each month, so we get bills paid as quickly as possible.
Okay. And from the capital projects that are there, can you tell us how many are actually, or percentage-wise, how many are actually local contractors and how many are actually would be nationwide contractors?
So I don't have the information at hand.
Through Madam Chair, what I was getting at is just trying to highlight to the public out there that our council is actually trying to keep our local economy going as much as they possibly can. As the invoices come in, they are getting paid.
So if you don't know what I can comment on is the senior level, we have 80% of the contractors.
Any further debate? Go back to my little page I might have removed that. Councillor Murphy, right of the
Well, thank you, staff. Thank you for a wonderful meeting.
I'll put that motion. Those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Councillors, before we resolve to exclude the public, we do have an extraordinary item 1.6 for the closed portion of our agenda, and it is the Untitled Development subdivision legal matters, and I do need, it was supplementary, I need a resolution for us to discuss that in the meeting. Councillor Cockerill is moving, Councillor Denning is seconding. I'll put that motion, those in favour, aye. Aye. Against, carried. Now, if somebody would like us to move us into confidential.
I'll move.
Councillor Ennis is moving and Councillor Cooper is seconding.